Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Merrell Fankhauser radio show. Tonight is a special show. For the first 45 minutes, I interview Merrell. Welcome to another edition of the Merrell Fankhauser radio show. And I hate when YouTube is on. That's on me. Anyway, tonight, a special show. First 45 minutes, I will be interviewing Merrell Fankhauser. We did this as a pre-record a couple of weeks ago, so it's for the holidays. And then we will be hearing the Rockin and Surfin CD following the interview. So I hope everybody enjoys the show. And let's get it started now. Stand by. All right, I am here with Merrell Fankhauser for the Merrell Fankhauser show that I have to say I'm honored and privileged to be able to air his show on my YouTube channel monthly, which is every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And Merrell, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing great today, Bill. It's a nice sunny day out here on the California Central Coast.
I don't expect anything less out there at West. Before we begin, I just want to say Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year's to you and your family.
Thank you.
Does Merrell Fankhauser and the family do anything special for the holidays?
Well, you know, my birthday is on December 23rd, and for quite a few years we've had a Tiki Lounge video party here at the stage on the back lot. But because the weather has been kind of odd and they're, you know, finally expecting rain, we're not going to do that this year. It's just going to be more of a low-key thing.
By the way, now that we mentioned a little bit about weather, my prayers and thoughts go out to all those affected by the fires that were going on in California. Were you affected by them at all?
Well, you know what? Because they were on the south and the north, after a few days, we started getting smoke down here along the Central Coast, and they had an air, warning that it would be best to stay indoors. And yeah. I could see the smoke out over the ocean. It was going down the coast.
Wow. All right, so we have a little time here to go over your past. And by saying that, I want to start at the beginning, Merrell. Let's discuss your youth and when was the first time you picked up a guitar, the first song you wrote, and band.
Well, for my 11th birthday, and I was still living in Louisville, Kentucky, my parents got me a ukulele for Christmas. Or it might have been my birthday. It's 2 days before Christmas. And my dad started teaching me chords because he played guitar, and in his earlier days, he played 5-string banjo in a Dixieland band. So right away, I started playing the ukulele and just learning little songs, kind of folk songs and even Christmas songs out of a songbook I had. And I just kept playing it all along. I didn't write any songs at first on the ukulele, and then we moved to California in around the end of my 13th birthday, and I got a 6-string acoustic guitar, and I started learning other folk songs and a lot of the Kingston Trio songs from back then. And I did start writing some songs, but I didn't really write them down till later. And probably, I'd say around 16 or 17, I started coming up with lyrics and melodies. And one of the first songs that I wrote that didn't get recorded till about 1964 was Too Many Heartbreaks. And I wrote that around 1960, I think.
Wow.
And then it ended up on the flip side of Please Be Mine, a 45 that was released on Glen Records. So that was actually one of my first songs that I wrote, and it actually got put out on a record.
And what was the first band you were in?
The first band I was in, of course, was the Impacts.
Wow.
They had the Wipeout album released in 1962 on Delphi Records, the label that had Richie Valens And later they signed other surf groups in '63 and around in there when the instrumental surf craze was really big.
Now, that was released in 1962 on Delphi Records, correct?
Yeah, September of '62. We were playing at the Rose Garden Ballroom, which was the biggest ballroom between L.A. and San Francisco at the time in Pismo Beach, and all of the well-known groups of the day had played there, and I got to meet the Ventures there and became friends with them, and I was really, fans of their instrumental music. And a talent scout from Delphi Records heard us and booked time in a studio in L.A., and we drove down. In one day, we recorded the entire Impact's Wipeout album.
Wow.
And then it was released in November on Delphi, and it was in every record store in California. And then they called us back down in 1963, January, to record more songs that they ended up putting out on, just so many of those compilation or albums they were, with other surf groups. And we did another version of Wipeout that had drum solos in it, and they brought my guitar lead out to the front more because they were going to put it out on a 45. But however things happened, it never got released. And the drummer from the Challengers, who was also ended up being a producer, manager, and publisher of the Surfaris, later on in May, he was in our recording sessions, and he was learning the production and publishing ropes from the two producers that produced us, Knowles and Hilder. And the way the story went, he played our version for the Surfaris, and they improved upon it with making drum solos all the way through. And theirs was a big hit, and ours never came out on a 45.
Wow.
And that's how it all started. And we didn't know anything about copyrights or publishing, and we had no contracts with these producers, and they sold it to Wipeout, got money in advance, kept all the money, and they produced a lot of other groups too, and they never paid anybody any royalties, and I didn't get any royalties till 1994 when those publishing and copyrights expired, and by then I learned how to copyright and publish songs myself, way back in the late 60s, and then I got the rights back, and from 1994 I started getting my royalties for our version and radio play.
So it took almost 30 years for you to regain the copyright rights to the song Wipeout that a lot of people are familiar with other artists doing it, like you just mentioned. So that was like a major issue for probably not just yourself, but other artists as well, right? During that time?
Yeah. There were so many young surf groups that were just like us that they would hear them playing, and we were one of the first, Bill, the Impacts, and I played with a band called the Revels before the Impacts that had a hit called Church Key that was an instrumental. And all of these groups got signed. There was another group from San Luis Obispo, the Sentinels, that had the drummer Johnny Barbada, who was just a young guy, and he went on to play with the Turtles and the Jefferson Starship, and later even with Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Wow.
But none of these young groups, they didn't know anything about how to copyright or publish a song. So many of them that I talked to actually got ripped off by the same producers and other producers. So a lot of them that I've talked to never got any royalties from their records that were released back then.
I consider you, this is my own personal opinion, I consider you to be one of the pioneers for the whole surfer genre and the music. What do you think about yourself?
They call me that, Bill. That's interesting you say that. And, I was a surfer at Pismo Beach, and I started getting these ideas for songs when I was surfing, and of course the Ventures had the hit Walk Don't Run. And so instrumental music by them and the Champs that did Tequila was real big. So I just started writing these instrumental songs and putting surf titles to them. Wipeout I originally called Kick Out, and that's when you kick out of the wave. And I was surfing one day, and the sax player with the Impacts was watching me surf, and I got wiped out. And there was a lot of pretty girls sitting along the beach there, and he started laughing and going, ha, 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 Merrell really got wiped out on that one. So I threw my board in the car and came home, and I was driving home, and I thought, Wipeout, that might be a better title for the song than Kick Out. And we'd been playing at the Rose Garden Ballroom, where we were the house band, and we'd been playing the song and calling it Kick Out. And then I changed it to Wipeout around the time we went down and recorded, and it was sold to Delphi, and the rest is history.
Yep, as they say. Now, let's talk about the Fapardockley album. This album featured numerous musicians that would also appear with you on your future projects, the HMS Bounty, the Moo Band, as well as Captain Beefheart. Give us some background on that record.
Okay. I played with the Impacts from about the end of 61 to the end of 63, and then my dad, who was a flight instructor, got the flight school in Lancaster, California, up in the desert. So at the end of 63, we moved up there, and there I was working on this airport out in the desert, which was really different because I was used to being in more of a semi-tropical climate and having the ocean. And there was nothing there but rattlesnakes, jackrabbits, and tumbleweeds. So I was sitting in the hangar one day practicing my guitar, and one of the county employees from the airport heard me. He said, hey, my son is learning to play the guitar, and maybe you'd like to come in town and play with him. And I was dying to play with somebody. You know, I'd left the Impacts, and there I was, sort of all on my own in the desert. So I went in town, and I met 14-year-old young Jeff Cotton, who we started playing together and hit it off, and I taught him some of my surf bands, and I was writing vocals then, and I showed him Too Many Heartbreaks that I'd written years before, and we decided the first night to form a band, and we started auditioning people and got Jim Ferguson on bass, Greg Hampton on drums, and Dan Stevens on guitar, and we started playing local dances in Lancaster and Palmdale in the high California desert.
Wow.
And Glenn Records heard us, and he said, how would you boys like to come to my studio in Palmdale and make a record? And we were excited. So we went over and we recorded the first two songs that I had written, Please Be Mine and Too Many Heartbreaks, and he put it out and sent it to his 50 or so radio stations he had and a few distributors across the United States, and it started getting a lot of play, both sides, and got played in the big radio station KRLA in LA.
Nice.
And so we ended up doing about 5 singles for Glenn Records that he put out, and one of them in 1967 got on American Bandstand, Tomorrow's Girl, for the Raider Record contest, and we won the contest with that song.
Cool.
So that got us even more gigs and playing in LA, doing television shows, and things really took off for us. And then my dad finished the 4.5, 5 years at the flight school there, and we moved back to Arroyo Grande on the Central Coast, and he took his job back at the Santa Maria airport. So I met up again with Bill Dodd, who played on the Fapper Dockley album with me, along with some other Central Coast musicians. And we decided to form a band, and we started playing gigs here. And again, I had a new burst of inspiration, and the psychedelic era had started, so I started writing all these psychedelic songs. And meanwhile, we were calling it Fapper Dockley at first, and I got that name from the first two letters of each band member at the time. Fankhauser, F.A., Parrish was the bass player, D.O.D. for Bill Dodd, and Dick Lee for Dick Lee, who was the drummer. Mm-hmm. And it sounded kind of psychedelic. So I had written all of these songs that were more in that vein and kind of a folk rock vein and something undefinable. And I remember playing some of them for Glen Records, and they loved them. And they said, well, why don't you boys come over here and record? And he had a lot of extra songs that he'd recorded when we were Merrell and the Exiles, mm-hmm. that he just put on the shelf that never got released. So we drove over to the high desert and did 2 or 3 recording sessions and recorded some of my new songs. And within a few months, he had a whole album assembled and mastered it at RCA, and they put it out, and it immediately started getting a lot of airplay. And so I kept writing and writing, and we decided at that time, that was the beginning of 1968, to move to Hollywood and get a record deal with these new songs and play gigs down there, because we were getting offers to play in L.A. So we went down and we met 2 producers that I'd met before, Norm Knowles and Jack Hoffman, who had produced Bad Company and some other groups that were well known at that time. And they took us into the famous Gold Star studio where, oh gosh, the Buffalo Springfield had recorded there, Sonny and Cher, Iron Butterfly. Wow. And within 3 weeks, we had the whole HMS Bounty album done. And we went and auditioned for Rust Regan, who was the president of Uni Records, who ended up later signing Neil Diamond and then, of course, Elton John.
Wow.
And they put the album out, and there was a song on there called Things that immediately got national airplay. So before we knew it, we were playing all of the big places in L.A., the Whiskey A Go-Go, Pandora's Box, and big concerts, and the big ballrooms in places like the Coconut Grove, where classic bands had played. And that went on pretty good till about 69, and then Bill and the other band members that were from up here on the Central Coast got tired of the city life, and at the same time, Uni had signed Neil Diamond, and he had already had a minor hit on a little label, I think, from Chicago called Bang Records. And they signed him, and our song Things was, probably about number 28 on the Billboard charts. And we were all excited, thinking it was going to be a big million seller. Mm-hmm. And we watched all of the publicity go over to Neil Diamond and watched our single fall off the charts.
But at the same time, Merrell, that album, the HMS Bounty, is one of those timeless albums that to this day is still getting airplay, correct? On classic rock stations?
That's right, and it's been reissued on labels in UK, Spain. It's come out on CD on Sundays, records from New York, and now it's on Gear Fab reissued, and it just keeps selling. And Bill, every month somebody emails me and wants to know if I have an original copy still of it for sale, but
what would original?
They go for about $350.
That's what I was going to ask you.
If you can find one.
Wow. Now let's move on. Let's move on to Moo, because I think personally, knowing you, it had to be a life-changing, defining moment in your life, Merrell. Because when you moved there, that's a whole different thing too. Just moving from California to Hawaii with the band. I think that was in '73. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, before that happened, like I said, around the beginning of '69, the other band members of HMS Bounty moved back up here to the Central Coast, and by then Jeff Cotton had already been playing in Captain Beefheart's band for a couple of years, and we lived in Woodland Hills, a suburb of L.A., and the next canyon over was Captain Beefheart's house where the whole band lived. And every once in a while I would go over and jam with them, and then one day Jeff expressed that he'd like to leave Beefheart's band and join me. And so he came back and moved into the house with me and the rest of the guys. One of the guys was an Exiles bass player, Larry Willie, and a drummer that also had played with me up in the desert, Randy Weimer. So Jeff knew both of them very well and had played with me in bands before. So he moved into the house and we immediately started writing songs. Well, I found this book in the log bin next to the fireplace in this rented house I had called The Lost Continent of Moo by Colonel James Churchward.
Wow.
And that really sparked our interest, and it told about how there was this lost continent that was part of the Hawaiian Islands, and that some of even the South American Indian tribes claim to have come from a now submerged continent in the Pacific Ocean. And this really sparked our interest in the fact that the Hawaiian Islands were supposed to be part of this lost continent of Moo. So Jeff and I started writing all these songs about Moo and studying everything we could find in libraries and books. And a producer heard us playing at the Beverly Hilton, I think it was, in the big ballroom, and took us in the studio. And in 3 nights, because we were so well rehearsed, we recorded the whole first Moo album.
Wow.
Which he immediately signed to Era Records, who was one of the first labels that put out the Beach Boys and other bands. And that started getting lots of airplay all over, even in Cleveland, Ohio, New York, and all across the country, and places like Arizona and Texas and New Mexico and all over in California. And that started another big round of publicity, and we met promoter Audrey Franklin, who had promoted the first concert by the Beach Boys at the Hollywood Bowl. And she was Ella Fitzgerald, the jazz singer's personal promoter. So she loved us and just started promoting us and putting us on. We were on CBS News and everything. We were overwhelmed how much she got going. So then we decided, after we'd made some money, that we really had to go explore Maui. And we had a friend that had moved there, and he told us about some ruins out in the jungle there. So we moved out of the house, sold our equipment van and cars, and got a one-way ticket with our amplifiers and suitcases and guitars to Maui.
Wow.
And and we rented a house that was on the edge of the rainforest in the village of Haiku, and it had electricity and running water. And then we moved in there and started writing these new songs about Moo, and meanwhile I was exploring ruins that were out in the jungle, and I met some older Hawaiian men that were interested, that here I was, a blonde haole, interested in pre-Hawaiian history. So this one old Hawaiian guy showed me this stone trail going down into this valley, and he said he used to play there as a little kid, but his parents forbid him to go down there. They said it was kapu, that the Moo people might get him and take him away. And he wouldn't even go down there, and he was 80 years old.
Wow.
So I went down to explore this, and I felt like, well, the only way I can put it into words is I was Indiana Jones before they invented the character, and I came to this valley with this pristine waterfall and a pool, and in front of that on a stone platform were 4 pillars that almost looked Grecian, like the sides were like they'd been machined or something, you know, that convex kind of curving. And there was one pillar that had broke off and was laying in this pool, and I just had goosebumps, Bill.
I bet.
And I later came back with a camera and went on the side of the trail, and I could get a picture of one of them, which is also in my book, Calling from a Star, the Merrell Fankhauser story, and it's on at my website also in different places.
Also, also on a previous show here, when we had the show, you provided the photos, which, folks, if you go to it and look at the Moo YouTube show, you will see the photos that Merrell took at that time.
Exactly. And then I found on the desolate side of the island where the lava flow had gone down, the last one was over 500 years, and somebody told me about a bunch of buildings out there that were partially covered by the lava flow, and it was amazing, Bill. I had to walk 7 miles out this stone trail with these rock walls, and then a mountain of lava would come over the trail. You'd have to climb over that, and then you'd see the trail going off through this lava field. And then I looked out into the lava field towards the mountain, and I saw what looked like rock walls and steps. So I went out and checked it all out, and sure enough, there were old ancient buildings that were partially covered with the lava. And about 7 miles out, there was this big building up on a hill, and I hiked up to it, and then over in the corner there was a hole in this rickety ladder, and then there was like handmade torches. You could see people had been going down there with a torch, and I did have a flashlight, and I climbed down this rickety ladder, and again, I got goosebumps.
Wow.
It was the same stone-cut floor in like a cellar under it, and pillars, 2 pillars on the end of this, it was like a basement-type cellar that were on the complete other side of the island. It was the same carvings, you could tell. And an old Hawaiian said, oh yeah, that was the remnants of Moo. And when the Hawaiians first came to the island, there was a blonde and red-haired race that lived out in that area.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And one time I was in the Bishop Museum in Honolulu, and they had all this ancient stuff, and they had a stone axe head that had came from that area that somebody had found, and they said they believed it to be of Viking origin, was the only thing they could figure out. So the Hawaiians, that area, they'll go along the beach to go fishing, but they won't go in to that desolate area that's covered with houses. It's another thing that they're really afraid of. They won't be there after dark. They make sure they get done fishing and go back out of there, hike out of the trail, and they call it the King's Burial Ground.
Interesting.
So one more thing, Moo and I were hiking through Haleakala Crater, and because that was one of the things we wanted to do, And we got halfway down this trail at 10,500 feet, and I looked out into that lava flow, and I said, "Guys, look at that. That looks like a pyramid." And they went, "What?" And they went, "Yeah." And so they went off the trail, and I had this little, camera that I remember my mom had given me. And I hiked over to this thing, Bill, but it was very dangerous because that lava is so sharp, and it was cutting my jeans and my boots up.
Wow.
And I had to jump several chasms to get there that I could have fallen into a bottomless pit or something.
Oh my God.
But I made it to the edge of the pyramid, and I got a picture of it. And as near as I could figure, it was about 38 to 40 feet tall, and it was sticking out of the lava flow. And that picture is on that show that you have, also the Merrell Fankhauser YouTube show with the two Moo albums. And I climbed up on the side of it, and I got so dizzy and got vertigo I could barely climb down. And I had a hard time getting back to the trail to the guys. But I had talked to somebody, and they said that in later years, around the late 70s, the Parks Department let National Geographic go up there, and they let them bore a hole in the side of this pyramid, and they said that was just the capstone. It was a much bigger structure.
It was underground. Under
the lava.
Yep. Wow. Now, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'm going to skip on right by.
I know it took a while to explain all of that, but
it's
I'm
great.
Still, as you can see, very enthralled with it all.
And I'll tell you, that's why folks also need to get your book, because there's a lot of information there. I have the book, and it's a great book, and I really hope that your fans and anyone that is interested in music and your background go out and get it, because there's some really cool stories in there as well, that your experiences with other musicians. I mean, it's a really good book, so I enjoyed it, and I'm sure that your fans would enjoy it as well. But you also were in a cabin, and we're going to talk about her toward the end, but violinist Mary Lee.
Yeah, well, in 1974, the Moo guys became Christians, and they decided to move back to the mainland. And it just so happened that I met Mary Lee, the violinist, on Maui, and we started playing together. And we moved out of the house in the village of Haiku out to an area called Walo, and there was a cabin I rented very cheap there that was partially built, and it was by a stream and a waterfall, and I wanted to experience the jungle, and I kept exploring out in the jungle all the time. And I just started writing these almost symphonic, spiritual folk songs, and Mary's violin inspired me even more. And I wrote the song Waterfall in the middle of the night. I woke up and I would hear these songs in my head, and it's almost like the stream was feeding them to me. And she said, "What's that?" And I didn't even know what chords I was playing, and she picked up a paper bag and wrote all the music out for me, so I didn't lose the song. And then we got some interest from another label and a producer in LA, and I had all these songs written, and we flew over to Los Angeles, and we got together with Bill Berg, the drummer that played on Blood on the Tracks by Bob Dylan, and some other Maui musicians, and within a month we cranked out the whole Maui album. And that got out on several labels now, and also on CD, and that was a very inspired time. And Mary and I now, after 30-some years, we've gotten together in the last few weeks, and we're recording some new songs for a new album.
It's exactly why I said I didn't want to keep you, because I was going to lead up to that Merrell and Mary Lee are right now in the process of finishing up his latest CD album. I'm excited. I can't. When do you think that would be coming out, Merrell?
Well, I'm waiting on the drummer. He can't come over till January. That, it's was part of our old Maui band, and they found a song in a studio that was unfinished that Mary and I and Patrick Wellington had started, and they found the tape from 1977, Bill, and sent it to me, and I went, oh my gosh.
That's cool.
And so Mary put her violin on, and Patrick's coming over to redo the drums, and then we'll add bass to it and some harmony vocal, and that'll be a song from 1977 that will be in this group with new songs.
Well, you've played with so many incredible artists, including yourself. You're a great artist. You've written many songs over the decades. Even Willie Nelson performed, and you were on stage for that because I seen the video. When they did your song Wipeout, that was really cool. That Willie Nelson, that was in Hawaii, correct?
Yeah, that was at a big concert on Maui, and I did a whole concert with him, and that's on one of the TV shows. We did a lot of his songs, and then we did Wipeout. We finished the concert, which was really something, and I've talked to him a few times since, and he said how much he enjoyed that day at the big outdoor amphitheater on Maui in front of 10,000 people.
Yeah, it was very impressive, and you could see the crowd was all into it. It was phenomenal to see that. Now,
yeah, that's on YouTube.
Yes.
If you go to YouTube and type in Merrell Fankhauser, Willie Nelson, Wipeout, that will come up.
Yep. Now, recently, I heard one of your songs that was featured in a movie. Discuss that, and is there any upcoming maybe cameo musical appearances on feature films that the fans should be aware of?
Well, I've had so many in movies, a lot of surf movies, a movie called Shape Makers, River Surfing, and so many, Bill. And then a movie from the late 70s or early 80s called The Limey with Peter Fonda, and then Shadows in the Storm in about 85 with Ned Beatty. And then recently, the movie Chappaquiddick about Ted Kennedy. Yes. They used my 1967 song, Lila. And just a few months ago, they used 3 of my songs in a TV mini-series called The Truth About the Harry Kubert Affair. I haven't seen that yet. But there's such a long list of them that I don't even know all of them, and a lot of them I haven't seen.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm going to tell you a little secret. When you send me the music to air on YouTube, I only edit it. I do not listen to it. I want it to be spontaneous because a lot of material that you send me I've never heard before. So I'm in there in the chat room with all the people that participate during the show when it's being shown live on and aired live on YouTube. And I have to tell you, I'm interested in all kinds of different genres of music. And I know that in the past, there have been albums that I've purchased that maybe had 2-3 songs that I might really like, and the rest are, okay. Yours, when I hear them, I have to say, I would say 95% of the music I hear from you is songs that I enjoy. I feel the positive energy, the vibe, everything. To me, this music is something that is universal. It's global and it's international because it doesn't matter where you come from, what walk of life. This music is uplifting and make you feel good about yourself and your surroundings. That's just my personal opinion when I listen to your music. And before I wrap, I just want to say that you and Kevin Estrella and a few others were featured not just on the Eclectia album that was released in the UK, but also you were part of Grant Cameron's book. Because you just mentioned earlier about you got that song in the middle of the night. It was almost like a download. How would you say is the process on when you write and how the music comes to you?
It's hard to say, Bill. That started happening to me probably even in the days of Fapper Dockley and HMS Bounty, but I didn't realize it. I would just get this feeling that comes over me, and all of a sudden I got to either turn on a tape recorder and play it and sing it in there. I don't even it's like automatic writing. And I think I told you once before, I met John Lennon at Harry Nilsson's house back in the 70s, and I played a song On Our Way to Hana for him, and he thought that was interesting, and I got to talk to him, and he said, isn't it interesting where songs come from? You never know what's going to trigger one, and if you don't get it down in time, and it can go away. And I said, yeah, my best songs are written in 15 minutes. And he said, same here. And so that just shows me he didn't, a lot of people want to say it's from extraterrestrial, but I can't really say that. I know that, like my song Calling from a Star was inspired by seeing a UFO, but I can't say all my music was inspired from that, but it automatically comes from somewhere, and it's a gift, and I'm so honored and glad that I can still keep doing this today, and with over 50 some albums that I know about and probably 30 singles, and that's not mentioning all the compilations and bootlegs. I'm still going, and I'm so happy that labels still want to put out my music.
Now, do you consider yourself self-taught as a guitar player, and did you eventually study music that you could actually write it down to paper?
Well, my dad taught me my first chords and things, so then I went on from there as being self-taught, and I got a few music books and, started studying that, and I can write basic notation down and chords, of course, but as far as, being able to transcribe a whole song with perfect notes, I can't do that. I have somebody that I hire when I need to do that, and I usually write out a basic thing for the band when I show them a song before we record it.
I'll tell you one thing. I am self-taught. I cannot read a note. I can't write a note, but I'll tell you this right now. When I pick up that guitar, I sure can tune it, and I know by ear, my music ear is trained to hear the notes, the frequency, the tone, the note, and I can easily transfer it, whatever I hear, right to the guitar just based on my hearing and knowing how to interpret it onto my guitar. The same goes to when I get on that drum set. I'm listening to the bass, the snare, the cymbals, the toms, the hi-hat, whatever it is. I can hear it and interpret it right to the drums without even have to read a note, because I have that gift, that ability, and I'm sure you do, that we're able to just listen to something and immediately interpret it to an instrument.
Yeah, I used to learn songs off the radio by ear, and of course, the Beatles couldn't read a note of music, and look at all the great music they wrote.
Eddie Van Halen can't read a thing. He just plays. So I just want to say that, because you don't have to be a musically trained person. It's about feel. It's because you have a lot of feel in your music, a lot of passion, and it comes through in your music. And for those that are listening, if you're interested in picking up an instrument, and I would really highly advise to do so, because when you play an instrument, it just takes you completely away from all your surroundings, and you get so enveloped and involved in the music. It just takes you to a different place. And I'm going to tell you, it's a great feeling to be able to play. And for you, like for yourself, you perform in front of hundreds and millions of people. I mean, you've been doing it a long time. It's just a great feeling. It's high adrenaline, a natural high. And it's just a great, like I said, I love my music. I love music. Music is like my number one thing in my life that keeps me going, because it's always there for me. No matter what mood I'm in, the music is there for me to turn to for whatever mood I'm in. So I want to thank you for everything you've done in your career and continue to do in your career. You're a very humble, you're just a great, positive person. And when people speak to you or listen to your music, they, believe me, that comes across from you, just the person that you are, and of course your music. So on behalf of all your fans, and I'm sure I'm sharing the same thoughts they have, we thank you for your contributions to music, for all these years, and we definitely all look forward to your future endeavors and projects.
Thank you, Bill, for all the kind words, and it's an honor for me. I've really enjoyed, it's been over a year now that you've been producing the Merrell Fankhauser radio show, and everybody is enjoying it, and it's led to magazine articles from all over the world. The one magazine from Budapest that was 48 pages long, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I hope you can fit this. Maybe you can make this show a little longer and fit this whole interview in, because we covered so much.
I am. It's gonna probably end up being 2 hours, but you know what? I think your fans are gonna love it. I loved it, and I appreciate it. But before I let you go, what's coming up in Merrell Fankhauser's universe? I know you got the new CD. Are you performing locally in California? What are your plans?
Well, because of the weird weather, we haven't filmed any more Tiki Lounge TV shows out here. And right now, I don't have any gigs lined up because I'm concentrating really on finishing this new album. And like I said, that's the main focus right now. And I hope by the end of January, I have that. And I've just mentioned it to 3 labels, and they're all interested already.
Cool.
So
well, that's a good sign. That's a good sign.
I'm just
and you know
staying on the beam.
And you learned the lessons from the past.
Yes.
Anyway, Merrell, thank you so much for coming on for this approximate 45 minutes when it was originally going to be for 15. But you know what?
Wow.
It was awesome to have you on, and I'm sure everybody is going to enjoy it. And I want to wish you and your family Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and looking forward to the new year doing more Merrell Fankhauser radio shows on YouTube.
Thank you so much, Bill, and warmest allohas to you and everybody.
All righty, Merrell. You take care, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Ooh, look at the beach. Let's stop here. Okay. This place is cool. Hey, guys. Can you tell us where we're at?
Grover Beach! Get ready to take a trip from surf to psychedelia and beyond with the Central Coast's own Merrell Fankhauser. Here's Merrell.
I'm Merrell Fankhauser. In the late 90s, I started getting requests from DJs across the country and overseas for me to record more instrumental surf music. My band, The Impacts, and I had released 3 reunion surf instrumental albums in the early 90s. Delphi Records had reissued our 1962 Wipeout album and several compilations we were on, riding the wave of the movie Pulp Fiction in 1994 that featured the music. A DJ named Rockin Robert Hutchinson from WAIF Cincinnati, Ohio, had been playing the Impacts instrumentals for years. When I told him the Impacts were no longer together, he said I should do a solo instrumental surf album. I took Rockin' Robert's advice, and in 2004, Merrell Fankhauser's Rockin' and Surfin' album was released. Get ready to catch a wave. Surf's up. On this show, we're playing my 2004 instrumental surf release that came out in the US and in Japan on the Captain Trip label. In that set, you heard Rockin' and Surfin', Johnny Be Good, All Along the Watchtower, Wild Gyrations, Beach Boogie, and San Jose. So there were a few originals mixed in with other standard rock songs that we decided to do instrumentals of. Okay, get ready to catch another wave with Merrell Fankhauser's Rockin' and Surfin' album. You've been listening to my 2004 instrumental surf album, Rockin' and Surfin'. In that set, you heard Sukiyaki, Surfin' 101, La Perouse, Pipeline, Baja, and Last Wave at Honolulu. It was obvious by the substantial sales and letters and emails I was getting from fans and DJs that instrumental surf was having another resurgence. You could hear the music quite often on TV and radio ads and more movie soundtracks. By this time, I had a list of over 100 DJs requesting another instrumental surf album. Over a 7-year period, I went on to do 4 volumes of Rockin' and Surfin' albums. And we will be playing more volumes on upcoming shows, so listen up for that. Until next time, this is Merrell Fankhauser. Keep on rockin' and surfin'.
And I want to thank Merrell Fankhauser for that tremendous show. We will be back January 7th, 2020. Yep, 2020. So until then, on behalf of Merrell Fankhauser and myself, have a happy holidays, happy New Year. The best to you, your family, and friends. Please be safe out there when traveling. And of course, I will say, don't drink and drive. Have somebody else do the driving for you if you're going to go out and party. Anyway, so till next time, everybody, God bless, be well, be safe, be blessed, and aloha.